co-create the first ELSA map for Chile. That's the essential life support area map for Chile. I want to thank Marian, and if she introduced herself in the chat, if you could do the same, we would truly appreciate that. So as you can see on the screen, the main objective of today, or our sessions this week, is to produce the first iteration of our ELSA map for Chile. Now, the app aims at showing actions to protect, restore, and sustainably manage nature. And this in order to achieve the 12 priority policy objectives in your country. And this was selected during the first stakeholder consultation that was held in November 2021. As you can see in greater details, these are our objectives for today and tomorrow. And it states review national and global data selected, available data selected for the 12 policy targets, weight each data layer based on its relative importance, compare different scenarios based on this weighting, and revise and iterate the process based on the contributions of the national experts. At the end of this week's sessions, today and tomorrow, we'll have the first iteration of the ELSA map for Chile and a full understanding of the process and capacities or skills necessary to conduct this exercise. Now, afterwards, the map will undergo a second review with the Ministry of the Environment. And at the end of that, the idea is for the map to serve in support of several projects in the country. So today, we'll be joined by our lead, or science team lead, Dr. Oscar Venter from the UNDP Global Team. He'll begin with a brief introduction about what we hope to accomplish over the next 2 days. We'll also review all the feedback all the feedback you gave us last week. And based on this, the science team has refined the analysis and the ELSA web tool based on your feedback. And the idea is to provide an overview of your role in this during the coming sessions. For the rest of the session, we're going to dive deeper into the data, and we'll be reviewing and weighting the national and global data as proxies for the 12 policy targets. So as we weigh this data, you will each have 2 roles, one as experts and one as key stakeholders. As experts, you'll be able to contribute first on the quality of the data, and as a key stakeholder, you'll assess the relative importance of this data and its targets. So you're going to provide 2 weights, and this will help us attain the final weight that we provide for each input data layer. So we will be reviewing with you all of this information, and that way we will co-create Chile's essential life support area map tomorrow. So don't worry, I know it sounds a bit abstract right now because we're not viewing the map, but don't worry, we will take the time to walk you through all of this. So before continuing, I would like to thank our partners and our donors who have made this project possible and this consultation possible as well, mainly the UNDP country office in Chile and the Ministry of the Environment, as well as the Sustainable Market Foundation for its financial support. Okay, I think I've spoken way too much, so I'm going to give the floor to Esteban Delgado, who is with us from UNDP Chile, and he's going to provide some reflections on our previous session and the, well, expectation we have for today. Esteban, you have the floor. Thank you, Cassandra. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the second session of the second consultation round of the essential map for the essential life support area map for ELSA Chile. It was a great pleasure to have you all connected with us before during our last session. And let me just recap what we spoke about. Well, we were working on reviewing the science that's behind the ELSA project, the method that we use to develop this first science team of the project, Dr. Venter and James and Annie, who spoke about the principles, the functioning of the, in general terms, of MAP and the platforms. Then we spoke about the main scopes of protection, management, and sustainable management, and protection. Protect, manage, and restore. And how that works in Chile. And today we're going to hone or focus into the, we could say the heart of the project. We're going to speak about, Daniel's going to speak about the state of the project in Chile, and we're going to address the different policy instruments that were used for this, the 25 instruments that we reviewed, the 12 policy objectives that we decided upon ultimately. And then based on that, the data that we compiled and reviewed during this period to be able to build the map. Now today, we're going to review, as Cassandra said, each of these data layers. And then we're going to work on weighting each of these policy objectives or input data layers. That's our objective for today. And we hope to have your valuable information today during the session for that purpose. So we're part of the global team today to answer your queries and help you in everything that is possible. So welcome again, and thank you for the floor. Back to you, Cassandra. Thank you, Esteban, for those introductory words. Now I'm going to welcome again, just reintroduce Dr. Oscar Venter. He's our science team lead for the essential life support area mapping project in Chile and at the UNDP. He's just going to recap briefly the attainments of the last session, and will give you a brief introduction as to what we hope to accomplish in the next few days. And he will also show a demo of the ELSA web tool that we produced for this project. Oscar?
Thank you very much, Cassandra, for the introduction, Esteban as well for the recap. And welcome back, everybody. Thank you for your participation today, as well as all of your input for our session last week, which is greatly appreciated and very useful for us. Thank you for loading the slide deck, Veronica. So I'm going to start with a short contextual presentation before we start really looking at all the different data sets that are going into the ELSA process. So being gathered by the national team and being integrated into the process. So I wanted to start by saying that the essential life support area process is a large component of it is based around spatial data, as well as using cutting edge conservation planning tools. So this is the orange circle you see here is about data and tools. But the ELSA process also relies very heavily on other forms of input. In particular, over the last number of months, we've been working with a core team of national experts to acquire spatial data sets, review how those data sets are used, and basically work together to input their expertise into the process. And now, as we open up these sessions last week, today, and tomorrow, we're inviting a larger group of stakeholders into the process. So stakeholders can be people that are you who might work for relevant ministries or institutions in Chile with a vested interest or a mandate in natural resource management and conservation within Chile. So this stakeholder input is very important for a dialogue with the national experts, the core team, as well as inputting actual information directly into the tool and how data are used. And that in particular, that's about weighting the data, which we're going to explain later, and that's going to be the bulk of the session today. So I just wanted to highlight that this isn't a process solely driven by data. It also has these important inputs about experts from experts and stakeholders. Next slide. Another major input into ELSA is the policy commitments Chile has made through a number of long processes that have resulted in actual policy relating to natural resource management and conservation. So from these policies come 12 priority policy commitments that are helping guide the ELSA process. These commitments come from 6 key documents. The long-term climate strategy has contributed 4 commitments to the ELSA process. The National Landscape Restoration Plan has contributed 2, as has the National Biodiversity Strategy. There's also 1 commitment from the Nationally Determined Contribution and 1 from the Agro-Food Sustainability Strategy. So what's happening here is that these policies are feeding into ELSA to help guide ELSA. However, there are still some remaining gaps for us to be able to put enough pieces together to identify the essential life support areas. So for these gaps, we're reaching out to the core team of experts, but also to you as stakeholders, and asking specific questions and asking for your input to guide us for how to fill those gaps. In the end, tomorrow we want to reach the stage where we have the first essential life support area map for Chile. The key thing to understand, though, is that as we gather this additional input from the team of experts and from you as stakeholders into the ELSA process, that is input for the ELSA map, for that product we're going to get tomorrow. We need to be careful not to interpret this as redefining any policy for Chile. So for instance, when last week we needed to populate a target for sustainable management because we couldn't find something speaking to that yet in Chile's policy documents. So we're asking for your feedback for that target. We just want to be really clear that the target that we adopt for the ELSA process is not intended to be a target adopted for Chile regarding sustainable management. That process would be a much longer term involved process with the critical institutions and people to define an actual policy around sustainable management for Chile. So I just wanted to wanted to highlight that the input from you as stakeholders and experts is really critical to the ALSA process, and your participation and your willingness to engage and give us input really helps us get to where we need to be. But we just need to keep in mind that we're not redefining or creating policy as we do this. Okay, thank you. Esteban, I just wanted to ask if you had anything you wanted to add before we move on through the rest of my presentation.
No en este punto, Oscar, me parece que estás...
We're fine like that. Continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move to the next slide. So I'll actually ask if someone's able to share the summary, the PDF summary of the 12 policy commitments that came from those 6 documents into the chat. I'm not going to display them. There's quite a lot of content, but I'd like all the participants to have access to the 12 policy commitments and all the details therein. So Marion has just shared the file now. So you're able to click on that file and load that on your computer or your phone and view in more detail exactly what those 12 policy commitments are. They are the wording extracted from the policy documents. Now, our task with the core team was to identify spatial data sets that can reflect those 12 policy commitments. So it was quite a long process led by the national team to gather spatial data sets. Chile is in a very good position because it has so much national data. It probably has more national data sets specifically useful for mapping essential life support areas than any country we've worked with so far. The national team gathered all that spatial data, and then we worked with the team to connect those particular data sets to the policy commitments to identify places in Chile that can help support those policy commitments. So this is a process of going from policy to spatial data. And then today we're going to focus really on that spatial data, look at all the data sets. And as we go through them, you're going to see which of the policy commitments they're supporting. And then in the document that Marion just shared with you, you can make that connection yourself to see, okay, this data set is supporting this policy commitment. Next slide, please. So while the policy review identified, what the critical environmental values are in Chile, what is trying to be achieved from sustainable management, protection, and restoration in Chile, and we were able to connect that to spatial data. One thing that's not in the policies is which are the most critical of all these different environmental considerations. It's hard to optimize everything all at once. Often there's trade-offs between, for instance, climate change and human well-being and biodiversity conservation. So an important part is for us to understand, when we look at all these spatial data, which are the most important ones? Are some more important than others, or are they all the same? Without this weighting process with you as stakeholders, we just have to assume that everything is equal, which is probably not the case. We're probably going to find as we go through this process that you as stakeholders believe that certain data sets are more important or of higher quality than other ones. So that's why we do the weighting process. This is not something we can get from the policy documents. This is only something we can get through this participatory session. So that's the focus of today. Next slide, please. Tomorrow, we're going to have everything that we need. We're going to have all the spatial data. We'll have the policy. We'll have the weights. We'll have the targets. And we'll actually be able to start to generate essential life support area maps. So we've created an online tool which will have all this information loaded into it, including the weights from today. We'll put those in overnight, and have them ready for us tomorrow morning. And then we're going to be able to start to generate the maps, and we're going to analyze them. We're going to see how well the maps perform, the essential life support area maps, and we're going to have further feedback sessions tomorrow to refine the mapping and to create our first version of the essential life support area map by the end of tomorrow. So that's our objective for tomorrow. So these are two very big work days. Today is going to be the biggest work day for you as you weight all the data sets, and then tomorrow is going to be a very big work day for me, but there's still going to be some input from you that's going to be critical for guiding the final steps of the process. Next slide, please. I do want to also highlight that what we're doing here is quite a unique exercise. We are doing conservation planning, and we're doing it using an optimization tool, which is actually quite common now. A lot of institutions, a lot of countries use optimization to help with land use planning and conservation decisions. However, there are some unique things with ELSA. We're considering multiple objectives. We're not only focusing on biodiversity, we're also thinking about climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and we're also thinking about human well-being at the same time. We're also grappling with multiple actions to think more broadly about landscapes. We're optimizing not only for protected areas, but also for sustainable management, restoration, and urban greening. That is to optimize for these multiple land uses at one time is quite a rare thing. We've also created this user interface that uses the fastest optimization available. The user interface presents a simple way to view and control the tool, which can then generate results quite rapidly as far as conservation planning. It's slow for a website, but it's very fast for optimization, for large-scale national optimization. So that means that we can actually engage non-experts in the process. We can show what we're doing, we can show the results, and we can tweak the process. This is not an optimization being run in a back room by a team of experts that then just come with a map that everyone gets to look at. This is something we get to do together. Now, when we put all this together, optimizing for multiple objectives and multiple actions in real time with experts and non-experts, as far as we know, the essential life support area process is the first time this is being done anywhere in the world. So we're now, I believe Chile might be our 12th country that we're working with. The first countries, there was a lot of stumbling blocks, a lot of learning as we go. The process has become a bit smoother now. But I'd still want to highlight that what we're doing is still quite cutting edge, and sometimes we have technical issues with the tool. Part of that is because we try and turn over so quickly. We try and go from one day to the next to have a revised tool that we can use in these sessions. Okay, next slide. So I might quickly show you the tool that we've generated for Chile. It's not fully finished because we don't have the weights in there yet, but we do have a working version that I can just show you quickly. And then I'm going to go to another presentation really focusing on the data sets for your weighting. Before I do that, I might just ask, are there any comments or questions before we look at the tool based on what I've said so far, or any other input people would like to give?
Si tenemos algún comentario, pueden levantar la mano virtualmente o escribir en el chat, o yo estoy atenta a las cámaras.
We have some questions. Remember, you can turn on your cameras, ask your questions, or just ask the question in the chat. 1 second. Okay, wait, we do not have any questions. Sorry about that, Oscar.
The tool for Chile. You could see I've loaded it in a web browser. It's sitting on a server. It's running on a fairly powerful server to support the process that holds all the spatial data. This is something that after these initial sessions, we are able to transfer to servers in Chile. So all the data sits there and the tool sits there, but it can be accessed through the web. So here we can see these are all the spatial data sets that we're going to be looking at today. You're not yet really familiar with them. The core team, the core national team is, but the rest of you, we're going to really look at these data today. But you can see right here this weight. You can see all the data sets have been given the same weight, a weight of 5. This is just our default weight. But these weights can vary all the way from 0. It's not important at all, or the data is no good, and it should where sorry, I might Zoom, or I'm still in session.
You're still in session, Oscar, for some reason.
I'm just getting these messages that Zoom's closing, but it's fake news, I guess.
Your camera is
you can see right now.
You are still here.
Okay.
Sí, parece que hay problemas de la
Okay, I
conexión.
think that it's Oscar's connection, but he's connecting again. Don't worry. We just lost your screen projection. Okay.
Sí.
Okay, sorry about that. So you can see the weights for all the spatial data sets are the same. By the end of today, we're going to have actual weights based on the participant feedback. In the tool, you can see all the spatial data that's gone into it. Almost every data set being used is Chilean national data. For instance, this one is a proxy for climate refugia, underrepresented ecosystems, wetlands of Chile, all the way down to Chile's glaciers and periglacial areas. So I just wanted to show you that all the spatial data sets, if you want to view them, you can view them in the tool to see the distribution across Chile. Data to help identify the essential life support areas. So the first map I want to show is a heat map. So the heat map for the essential life support areas, you can see these hot red colors and then colder blue colors. The hot red colors are where many of those spatial data sets, many of those environmental values overlap. So you can see northern Chile as well as central region has a very high co-occurrence of many important environmental variables. Now, the one thing that's missing from this heat map is that weighting. If some layers are given a higher weight, they'll start to influence this map and change its distribution. So, for instance, I'm going to change, let's put glaciers up to 100. Just say it's so critically important, we can't ignore glaciers. We want to see glaciers very strongly represented in this map. Now the tool is regenerating this heat map, overlapping all the spatial data, but giving that really high weight to glaciers. Now this is an extreme case. This is not something that we do for the actual essential life support area process, but I just want to show you how it's going to change the map. And that's just a demonstration for when we get the weights from you, that's going to have some influence on that map. That's that final missing ingredient to start to produce these maps. Just wait a minute. It's doing a pretty big GIS process right now. Okay, now you can see the map looks drastically different. So these were the glaciers for Chile, and you can see now they are just popping out. They're driving the essential life support area heat map. So this is an extreme case, but it's just trying to show you how the weighting can change the map. I don't think we're going to see something this extreme from the actual weights from you today. So that's all I wanted to show today. Tomorrow, we're going to be using this tool a lot more. But I just wanted to show that for today to show how the weights influence the map before we go to the map. Tomorrow we'll explore the full functionality of the tool, everything you can see on the left-hand side here. These are the different parameters where we're able to change settings in the tool and do different runs. But yeah, I'll maybe leave it there for the tool. I'll ask if there's any comments or questions.
Podemos escribirlo en el chat.
Let's see, we're just checking the chat to see if there are any questions, any virtual hands raised or cameras on. We do not, Oscar. Everything's clear, so you can continue.
To ask any question. I never mind being interrupted, and we do have time for questions or comments. So feel free at any point to turn your microphone on or put your hand up, and we'll come to you. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and there's another presentation now that we can load.
Oscar, ¿qué opinas si ya que estamos pasando a
Oscar, since we're moving along to a different section, how about if we take our 10-minute break so we can move on to a different topic and presentation and without interrupting that? What do you think? Should we take our break now?
You're in charge, Cassandra. I'm happy to follow your lead. Yes.
Perfecto. Listo. Entonces,
all right, Oscar, thank you. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back so we can continue with our exercise. Wait, before that, we have some comments. Oscar, before we go to our break. Okay, Esteban says, can you again show us the variables behind the map? Can you just refer to that again? And then Hernan Latus, I think this is more of a, I don't know if it's a technical question, but is this page free of access? What you're showing us, can we access that directly?
Okay, I'll answer the second question about access. Yes, you can access it. You can see the URL up at the top of my screen. You can type this into your web browser and access it. But if you do that, the tool is going to crash and we're not going to complete the sessions. If we all do that together, it's running one instance of the tool. It's not designed for multiple users at one time. So if you feel like retaining this URL and accessing it after the sessions, please go ahead and do that. It's not password protected. We do sometimes password protect these, and we're able to do that, especially on a website. We can password protect this, but at the moment it's open. You can't download any of the input data from this data set. From this website, you can only download the ALSA result maps, which are highly integrated and don't show any of the inputs, but you can view the inputs on your screen. So yes, it's an open tool, but I'll just ask everyone to stay off it during the sessions. Esteban, you're asking about the inputs or the variables. Do you mean these variables on the left of the screen, or do you mean the input layers? Did the question come from Esteban?
Esteban, quien preguntó, que creo que no es Esteban Delgado.
Okay, it's not Esteban Delgado from the UNDP team that asked. It's another participant. Esteban, participant who asked this question, could you turn on your mic or your camera, or just ask through the chat what you mean by the variables behind the data on the map? In the meantime, Priscilla is also mentioning if we could zoom into the map better to view it more clearly. Is that possible?
Yes. Would you
Esteban,
like to?
quien preguntó sobre
Okay,
eso.
Esteban is who asked about this. I think he refers to the list of the input data. I think he's referring to that.
Okay, great. So we're gonna the whole rest of today we're gonna look at that list of input data. So instead of doing that now, we'll probably take the break, and then we'll start looking at each of those data one at a time and getting weights for those. I can quickly zoom into a different part of the map. We're going to do a lot more of that tomorrow, but is there somewhere you would like to go here? And you could maybe guide me up, down, east, west. Now, the problem is the heat map that I'm showing you, I've contaminated it by giving a very high weight to glaciers. So it's not showing the real distribution of environmental values anymore. But you can see we gave a very strong weight to glaciers in the map. And you can see the essential life support. Chile's glacial areas. But again, the map right now, it doesn't consider all the other data equally. It's basically focusing on glaciers now.
Y ahí nos comenta Esteban, bueno, que está con pésima.
Okay, Esteban says that he has a horrible connection. That's why he can't turn on his mic. But he was referring to the data input layers, and why you assigned 5 as weights. If you could just explain that once again.
Yes, we'll do that right after the break. That's going to be the focus of the rest of today.
Entonces, ¿les parece? Nos vamos 10 minutos.
Okay, so we're going to break for 10 minutes, and then we will come back with the actual weighting exercise.
Ya estamos entonces todos de vuelta. A ver si tengo algunas reacciones para saber que me están acompañando. Estoy escuchando en el canal de español en inglés. A ver si también podemos corregir eso mientras empezamos.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Sorry about that. I was speaking in English in the Spanish channel. Okay, I do have thumbs up cameras. Okay, so since we now understand the context for today's work, we're going to move on to the next activity. This is focusing on it's for the 12 policy objectives identified during our first consultation round. Now, Marion, my colleague, already shared Chile's policy commitments. In any case, we will reshare the PDF for you to open up the PDF on your own. I'd like to also thank Scott Atkinson and Dizan, our spatial data planners from the UNDP, who prepared this presentation together with Oscar, but due to different time constraints, they're on the other side of the world. They're not connected with us today. But this is information from selected also by our national UNDP spatial data experts using your national data as provided by you. And now we're going to look at conservation and climate change mitigation data, and we're going to begin. Go ahead, Oscar.
Okay, thank you, Cassandra. Welcome back, everybody. Veronica, if you could share the slide deck prepared by Dijang and Scott Atkinson. Great, thank you. So this is the heart of the data work. This presentation is focusing on all the spatial data being used in the essential life support area process. Our data experts on the UNDP global team are Dijon and Scott Atkinson. So I'm doing this presentation for them. Unfortunately, I am not as much of an expert as to the data sets as they are, but I'll do my best to present it, and potentially Esteban or Danielle can step in if there's some questions about the data that I'm unable to address. Okay, next slide. So there's quite a lot of data being used, and it's being used for different purposes. The first is to create a base map for us to work with, and this is data on Chile's national boundary, which is used for that. We divide that up into what we call planning units. So these are basically pixels in the landscape, which can be selected or not selected for an ALSA action. The next major group of data is what we call the planning. Taking action. And these benefits, we classify them roughly as biodiversity benefits, climate change, and human well-being. So these are our planning features. I believe there's 22 of them for Chile. And that's going to be the focus of what we look at next. And then the final group is about the actions and the hard constraints on those actions to protect, restore, manage urban greening. And those were data that we actually looked at last week already. Okay, next slide. And you can skip forward one more. This just summarized all the individual data sets, but we can go forward. One more slide. Thank you. So the first data layer is the national boundary layer for Chile, which we divided into 1 kilometer pixels, equaling 815,000 planning units, which are being considered in Chile. So these are 1 kilometer resolution planning units that summarize all the spatial data that we have. So it's the land area of Chile plus a 1 kilometer buffer to make sure that we capture coastal ecosystems like mangroves. Okay, next slide. So this is where things get a little bit more complicated. So now I'm going to introduce the weighting in a little bit more detail. So we're going to have a sheet that we're going to share with you in a minute, where you're going to be able to navigate to and be able to input your weights for every one of those 22 planning features that we're going to look at. So we're going to look at one planning feature at a time. We're going to show you what it is, and then we're going to ask you to give it a weight, actually 2 weights for each planning feature. The first weight reflects your view as a stakeholder on the value or importance of that particular layer. Sorry. The scale for the value is from 0 to 10. Now we prefer this just as integers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10. A value of 0 on this scale tells the tool that this data is not important at all. We shouldn't have included it, and it should not be considered. A value of 1 on the 0 to 10 scale says that this layer should be considered, but not very much. It's not that important. A value of 5, and that was our default that I showed you on the tool a minute ago, says that this layer is about of average importance. Scale, and that's saying that this is the most important layer as we identify the essential life support areas in a way that supports these policy commitments. A layer with a value of 10 is telling the tool that this is a really important one to consider. So we could, right now, we've got a value of 5 for everything. Everything is the same. This is the opportunity for stakeholder input to tell us how the values or the importance might actually differ. So that's going to be the first weight. This is about importance. The second weight is about confidence in the data. So this second weight might not everybody might be able to give a meaningful weight here. I think everybody can give a meaningful weight for importance. But for confidence in the data, this is probably more where the experts or people that know more about the data might step forward. You can step forward as an expert and give comments in the chat or using your microphone about the data to tell the rest of the participants where the data comes from, if it's very reliable or if it has issues. And then that can help other participants give a confidence weighting to the data. Now, there's three values. We like to keep this fairly simple. A value of 0.5 says that we have no reason not to believe this data. And that's going to be the default. We've already populated the confidence of 0.5 for everything. If you know that the data is actually no good, then you can give it a weight of 0. If you know that the data is actually some of the highest quality data that Chile has, you can give it a weight of 1. And then what we're going to do for tomorrow is we're actually going to multiply those together. The importance of the data and the confidence that people have in the data will be used to give the final weight to each layer. Okay, so we're going to start doing this. It's going to take us a while to weight the first 1 or 2 layers as everybody navigates to the sheet and we talk through a bit about the weighting process. So it's going to be kind of a learning as we do, learning while doing exercise, the weighting. But before we start doing, are there any comments or questions, any need for clarification on what I've said so far? Marianne has
Sí,
just
¿te
shared.
parece, Oscar? Entonces, sí, ya ha copiado Marión en el chat el link del documento Excel
Okay, we
online.
copied Marianne on the chat. We have the Excel document online. And Veronica, we can project that. Let's
Okay, before we start doing, I just wanted to ask if there are any comments or questions about what I explained about the weighting.
Sí, Priscila.
Priscilla, yes. I understood that you have the 3 values. It's 0, 0.5 and 1 only, right? The confidence values. You cannot say I don't know or it doesn't apply. It is limited to the 3 values only, 0, 0.5 and 1.
That's a great question, Priscilla. I don't know is actually 0.5. You're saying you don't know if it's better than other data or worse than other data.
Yeah.
So that's why I've actually, in the weighting sheet that we're going to look at, it's already 0.5 for everyone. So if you don't know, you can just leave it as that default.
Okay, por default. Okay, understand.
Yeah. But if you know that it's bad data, you were on the team that worked on that data and you knew that really what you guys like to do was to take time off and socialize, I don't know, then you could say we're going to give it a 0. Or if you know it's excellent data, that then you can give it a 1. But the default is 0.5 and you can leave it like that if you don't know. And that will probably be the case for many of the layers for the confidence. For the weighting, I haven't populated, there's no default. We want you to give a weight for the value, the importance of the layer.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions before we
Perfecto.
navigate?
¿Tenemos alguna otra consulta?
Any other questions? Cassandra is asking, any other questions?
Okay, thank you,
Seems
Veronica.
no questions for now.
Okay, Veronica, I'll actually have you navigate back to the presentation on slide 6. Okay, thank you. So Veronica was just showing you the Google Sheet where we input the layer. We're going to go to that, the weights. We'll go to that in a second. I first want to just present the first data set. So the first data set is a map of what we're calling climate refugia. This is an approximation of climate refugia. Measure of climate pressure, as well as the adaptive capacity index for plants and animals. So this is a measure of refugia based on climate variables, but also characteristics of species. So you can see, this is supporting the expand protected areas, the first target. Marianne, I'll ask you to just drop the targets into the sheet again so people can refer to the policy targets. The first target is focused on protected area expansion, but when you read the text, feel free to look at that slide and read the text. You'll see that they're really stressing the importance of climate refugia for protected area expansion, as well as underrepresented ecosystems. So we've mapped those two. We've used spatial data to map climate refugia and underrepresented ecosystems to support policy target 1. So the first data that I'm showing you is on the climate refugia. Again, as we explained, it's based on climate as well as species characteristics. It's supporting the first policy target. So the first thing, what we're going to do next is we're going to actually input your weights for the importance and the confidence in these data. And Esteban, if people have questions about the data, I think you know it much better than I do. I'm not sure if Danielle's on as well. Yes, you are. So if there's particular questions about the confidence of the data.
Sí.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the first layer we're looking at. It's climate refugia, it's national data, it's supporting the first policy target. We can now go to the weighting sheet. Veronica, if you want to pan over. And in the chat is a link to the weighting sheet available. Yes, so if you open your chat function on Zoom and you scroll up a couple of comments, the comment from Marion with the link, you can click on that link and that's going to bring you to the sheet that Veronica is showing you right now. This is going to be what we're going to be using for almost the next 2 hours. So it's going to take a little bit of time for everyone to navigate to this sheet and be able to pull it up on their computers. Some of you might be on phones and have trouble editing these cells, and we're going to work with you to get your weights still. We want everybody's weights. Hopefully most of you have navigated here already. I can start to explain to you what we're viewing. In the first column, column A, you'll have, I believe there's about 110 names. In that list, you'll be able to find your name. It looks like it's not alphabetical. So it might take you a little bit to find your name, but you can scroll through that first column and find your name. If you can't find it, you can scroll right to the bottom of the list and add your name in there directly. If you're unable to add your name directly, you can type your name into the chat and we'll add it for you. The row with your name, that's your row. You own that row for the rest of the session. That's where you're going to be putting your weights into.
I think there's a question from Osvaldo that is important.
Sí, Mario. Hemos recibido la pregunta de Osvaldo que dice si podemos poner nuevamente
We have a question from Osvaldo. Can we put the value, what's the meaning of each value? What each value stands for? Can we add that?
Yes, so that was we can go back to that slide again, but that's the slide I was telling you. For, let's say, look, column B. Okay. Thank you. So these are the values. for the importance, well, when we're back at the sheet, I'll show you where you can put the importance value in. The range is from 0 to 10. The average importance of a data set should be about 5. The most important data sets can get a value of 10, and data sets that aren't important at all get a value of 0. And you can put any number from 0 to 10. So 10 is most important, 0 is the tool will not consider it at all, and 5 is average importance. And then when you look at the confidence in the data, it's a value of 0, 0.5, or 1, and the default is 0.5. Does that clarify it, Osvaldo?
Sí, y también Esteban nos ha apoyado en colocarlo en el chat.
Esteban has put it in the chat too. The case in the importance, and Esteban will put the values for confidence too in the chat. And this is clear then for Osvaldo and the other participants, okay?
Okay, thank you, Veronica. If you can go back to the sheet.
Ya copió ahí Esteban, confianza.
Okay, so columns B and C both pertain to this first layer on climate refugia. Column B is that importance, 0 to 10. Column C is the confidence, 0, 0.5, or 1. So for your name, where you find your name, you can give an importance value and then the confidence value. And we can see that already 6 of you have 7 of you now have put in your data for importance. I might ask one of our team to maybe look through the participant list, and we can identify an expected level of input. I know we have 23 participants at the moment, but some of them, like myself and Cassandra, we are not voting members.
Sí, yo creo que sí, son alrededor de 13, 12, 13.
I think it's 13, 12 votes, okay, around 12, 13 votes. So we shall see how they fill that in. We will thank you because we are concentrating on these first columns, B and C. We don't move on to the next ones. We will wait for Oscar to explain the layers, and then we will do the weighting, okay? So, in the case of confidence, we have not yet received the votes.
Okay, well, thank you. So we're at 10. We're expecting about 12 or 13. We're going to come up with a new method to get those last 2 or 3. But like I said earlier, Chile has given us the most amount of useful data for mapping essential life support areas of any country. That's a true statement. The next true statement is this is the quickest that we've reached nearly full participation on the first data set. Normally it takes us about half an hour to navigate. So most of you have navigated here. There's still two or three of you which haven't input your data. In the chats, can you let us know what might be your issue? Maybe you're on a phone and you can't edit this, in which case you can give your values directly into the chat and our team will put them into the sheet for you. Your name will be on the chat, so you can just put in, let's say 7, 0.5, and then we'll know that those are the two values to put in for you. So we're still at 10 participants. We're expecting maybe 2 or 3 more. Okay, you go for it, Cassandra.
Sí, y Natalia, pierde cuidado, lo que debemos hacer es eliminar lo que habías colocado por otro participante y colocar tu nombre al final de la lista, ¿no? Natalia Hernández.
We have to put the name at the end of the list, Natalia, yes.
Listo, entonces con eso ya estamos teniendo los 12 participantes
With that, we have the 12 participants, Oscar.
Excellent. Okay. And we're not going to look at the confidence because of this default in there. We can't really see who's put in for the confidence. So we're going to assume that when you put in your importance weighting, you're also editing the confidence or leaving it as a default. So we're just going to be looking for the importance to determine participation rate. So that's great. We have everyone has given a weight for climate refugia, which is supporting that first policy target of protected area expansion. Before we start moving through the data sets, we're going to be able to start to move through them much quicker. I just want to ask, does anyone want to discuss any comments, questions, or concerns about how we're inputting these scores, or is everyone feeling happy and clear on how we're doing this? Thumbs
Parece
up
que
from
por
people?
ahora todo bien. Quizá algunos pulgares
Seems
arriba.
that everything is okay. If some thumbs up, you know, to show that everything is okay. Okay, many thumbs up. Yeah. Priscilla, yes. Her real thumb. So, Oscar, you can proceed.
Okay, now we're cooking with gas. We're ready to go. So we can go back to the presentation. We must now be on slide 8.
Antes que empieces a explicar, estoy haciendo un...
Before you start explaining, I'm crossing information between those that are here and those that are filling in the list. Jorge Herrero, Karin, do you have a problem to enter the list and enter your weighting? Jorge, can you help us? Karin as well.
Quizá ahora se vuelven a conectar y recibimos sus comentarios. Oscar, te dejo continuar y yo voy a dejarles acá también un comentario. Está teniendo problemas técnicos con el equipo Jorge. No te preocupes, Jorge.
Jorge is having technical problems.
Excel o ponernos sus ponderaciones en el chat y nosotros podemos apoyar. Lo mismo, Karin.
Jorge, you can write in the chat. The same for Karin. So back to you. Over to you, Oscar.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Jorge, please just, if you're able to access the chat, you can put your values into the chat and we'll transfer them to the sheet for you. Okay, so now we're on to our second data set. This one also supports the expand protected areas policy target. You can look at the details of that target on the sheet that we shared. You can see in there that there's wording about underrepresented ecosystems. So we've mapped these ecosystems as the percentage of the ecosystem that is not represented in the official protected area system. So you can see in value, the values that have bright yellow, these are ecosystems that are not very well represented. And in blue are ecosystems that are more strongly represented in the current protected area system. So this is showing the gaps, the ecological gaps really in protection. Again, it's all based on national data. You can see the data source there at the bottom of my slide. So if there aren't any questions about this data set, we can move back to the sheet and input a value for the importance as well as the confidence in these data.
Sí, Oscar, tenemos esta pregunta.
We have this question from Joanna, a more general question that applies to all the data that we are analyzing. She says, the weighting, shall we apply independently to each indicator or data, or is it comparing those relative to the same objective or goal?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to try and answer it, but if I misinterpret you, please ask again. The weighting is relative to the other data sets. So the way that the tool is going to consider it, it's going to look at all the spatial data, and it's going to look at the weights of those, and the weights are only important relative to the other data sets. So for instance, if every layer has a value of 5, or if every layer has a value of 10, it's exactly the same to the tool because there's no relative difference. So the absolute value doesn't matter, but if one layer has a value of 2 and the other layer has a value of 0.5, then the value of 2 is 4 times more important than the value of 0.5. So hopefully that explains it. The weighting is relative to the other layers. There's no absolute meaning to the weight itself.
Joana, ¿nos comenta si ha quedado claro?
Is that clear?
Y Hernán, si pudieras explicarnos.
Yes, it's clear. And Hernan, could you tell us the comment that you put on the chat? Can you hear? Yes. I think it's the other one. The violet, I don't understand. Violet for me is better represented, not underrepresented, more strongly represented. And you mean the map, indicator just explained by Oscar, right?
Yes.
Would you explain that again?
Hernan, I think I understood your comment, and you're correct. The violet is better represented. However, what we're mapping is we're trying to map underrepresented ecosystems that are still a gap, because we want the essential life support area for protection to try and focus on those ecosystems that have low representation. So the bright colors are showing ecosystems with low representation, but it's giving those ecosystems a higher value to help attract the essential life support areas to them and to fill that gap. Is that in line with your understanding, Hernan?
¿A qué se refiere más claro el amarillo?
You mean by lighter, you mean yellow? By lighter color, you mean yellow?
Yes. Yes, the yellow color is ecosystems that are underrepresented, have low representation currently.
Thank you very much.
Con esto podemos pasar al ejercicio del Excel en Drive. Ahí,
So now we're going to go to the next exercise. I'm not sure if you were able to make some progress with your weights. And Trevor, Reynaldo, I'm not sure if he's having problems entering your weight. Let me know, and we can support you. There's a team that will help us with that. The same goes for Claudio. Osvaldo, let me know, please. Hernan, now that you perhaps your queries have been answered, things are a bit clear, you can assign your weight. Okay, I see you all writing furiously. Okay, great. And we need one person that's still connecting. So, Oscar, we can continue with the next data set.
Okay, so Cassandra, you've looked at the sheet and you're happy
Cassandra
with the...
ya ha visto la hoja y... Sorry.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll move to the next data set, and then after presenting the data set, we can go to the sheet as a group and make sure everyone's waiting, but it looks like we're flying through this process, which is amazing.
Perfecto, Oscar. Y antes de eso, Joana nos ha...
Before that, Oscar, Joanna has a question, and she says that she's not sure Okay, she's not sure if our CLIM is the data source for this data set. She's asking in the chat. That's Joanna Arriagada.
Thank you, Joanna. I am not sure what happened. I'm looking at the untranslated version of this presentation, and it's showing the Department of Protected Areas, Ministry of the Environment of the Government of Chile as the source for the underrepresented ecosystems.
Sí.
So I believe that
Sí.
it might have been that the
En
translation.
esta diapositiva también. Sí, sí
Yes,
lo
the
vi.
same thing in the other slide. Same thing. It says data source. It says ArcClim at the end of the data source. Climate Risk Atlas and Ministry of Environment Chile. That last reference is in English in right at the bottom of the footnote of the slide, or at the very bottom of the slide. Is that correct, Oscar?
No, that's not. Thank you, Joanna, for pointing that out. I think you're saying that the RCLIM Climate Risk Atlas is not the source. On my other slide, it's showing the first source as Department of Protected Areas. So you're right. That's not the source. I'm not sure what happened. We might have used the wrong version as part of the translation. So thanks for correcting us. I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanna or Danielle, but I believe the correct sources for these data are Department of Protected Areas and the Ministry of the Environment of the Government of Chile, not ARCLIM. Okay. Does that sound right, Joanna? Was it Johanna?
Sí, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Oscar, for the clarification.
Okay. Great. We can go to the next slide. I'll try and keep an eye on the data sources across the slides. Okay, this looks like it's matching with what I have. So we're now on to the third planning feature. This one is a map of wetlands. It's coming from the Biodiversity Monitoring Information System, Symbio, and it's very recent data. It's showing a polygon, mapped areas from the National Inventory of Chilean Wetlands, updated just last year. So it's very recent data. You can see the distribution of wetlands mapped in the image here, the map. This is supporting policy target 2, which is really focused on wetland conservation. So a really close match here to the policy target. So if there aren't any comments or questions about this layer of wetlands, we can move to the weighting sheet.
Sí, ahí nos ha dejado Jorge Herreros un comentario.
So Jorge Herrero has a question. He says that the inventory is updated on a weekly basis. So you can consider that, Oscar. And Jorge, taking advantage that you are connected, that you were able to connect. If you could just go back and assign the weight to the last data set that we did not include, or that you didn't include that. Okay, he's like, I'm on that now. Okay, all right, wonderful. No. You're all wonderful. Thank you.
Estamos teniendo en la capa de humedales.
Okay, so we're on wetlands on this data set. We have 7 participants who already who are to assign their weights. There's 13, 7 left. Claudio. Thank you, Cassandra. Hi, Oscar, I have a question. So the goal that's associated, or the target associated with wetlands has to do with acknowledging urban wetlands in X amount of territory. So the information that is given in this layer, does it allow us to differentiate those that are just in the inventory, but we're not sure like the level of protection, although we know that they're included, but we're not sure the extent of the inclusion. So I'm not sure if it includes urban areas or not. I'm just thinking about fulfilling our targets, our objectives. I'm not sure if you understand the question.
Yeah, this gets into some of the complexity of how the ALSA interacts. So this part of it, what we're looking at now, this map of wetlands, it's supporting part of that target, because that target is to us, it's identifying the significance of wetlands. It's saying wetlands are important for Chile. So we have a map of wetlands here. But then another part of that target is specifying urban wetlands and the importance of an actual area-based target there. So that was actually extracted, and we looked at that last week. That was for the urban greening area-based target. I think it's 0.13% of Chile is coming actually from that target. So there's kind of two elements. One element is the importance of wetlands. And so here we have a map overall of wetlands for Chile. And the other one is specifically about wetlands within urban areas, and showing about kind of that's the importance of green space within urban areas. So I hope that makes sense, that target is feeding into two parts of the ALSA process.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Okay, yes, definitely clear. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Claudio, for your question. And just to add to what Jorge mentioned, that the inventory is updated almost on a weekly basis. And regarding the urban, declared urban wetlands, that could be found in the Symbio Geo portal. And you can download that information. And this is also frequently updated as the information is declared, or as the conservation level is stated. So it's updated often. Next. Oh, and Hernan also says that the inventory of wetlands allows us to know which wetlands are candidates to be blocked out or declared as important for urban greening. Okay, we're just translating the chat comments for you, just taking note of that. All right, so here we still need Hernan's weight. Hernan, do you have any issues filling out the weight, the Excel spreadsheet? Let me know also, Georgina, so we can move along. And Esteban, okay, Jorge is saying that he's on that, okay. Okay, we're taking note of your comments, Jorge, thank you. Okay, we can move forward, Oscar, to the next data layer.
Okay, thank you. So can you advance one slide, I think? Right. Okay, so this brings us to our fourth planning feature. This is a combined map of land degradation and desertification risk. It's supporting a number of policy commitments of reducing forest loss, vegetation restoration, and reducing emissions from forestry. So these commitments largely center around land conversion and some of the negative effects of land conversion. The data is a combination of the prediction of desertification and degradation risk based on a number of input layers, all of them Chilean national data. This is aridity index, current erosion risk, forest fire index, water deficit variation rate, and the human pressure index. So this is this creates the combined map of land degradation and desertification. The data are from the National Forestry Corporation, CONAF, and I'm not sure if there's any other comments. This is quite a complex data layer combining many different elements to give an indication of degradation and desertification risk. If anyone has anything to add about these layers, please go ahead now. Otherwise, we can move to the weighting of the importance and confidence in these data.
Parece que no tenemos ningún comentario. Estamos ya avanzando en el ejercicio de la
Okay, we don't
ponderación.
seem to have any comments, so we're just moving forward with the weighting. Remember, that we are looking at our Excel drive. We have participants, let me just see, that haven't filled out the weight in the sheet. Priscilla, for example, and Esteban. And now we'll move on to the next data layer. But before that, we have questions, Oscar. Daniel, do you have a question? And then Claudio.
Hola, Oscar. Hola a todos, todas.
Hello, Oscar. Hello, everyone. I wanted to ask here, just make sure I'm making sense with this. The indicator, okay, and violet refers to, or purple, that there's a lower risk of land degradation, is that it? And then as it gets greener and more yellow, that means there's greater risk. Is that right? Can you explain the colors? So the Mediterranean, the middle area is yellow, which we know, given other data, that it's okay, that it makes sense given what we know about the data. But can you just verify that I'm understanding this correctly? He says, could you just go over that again, the colors, and just to make sure that violet means that there's a lower risk, and that part. Okay, thank you.
Oscar, quizá prefieres
Oscar,
contestar.
would you be able to respond to that before we give the floor to Claudio? Would you like to just give your feedback on that, Oscar?
Entonces escuchamos a Claudio.
Yes.
Okay, Claudio. Oh, wait. One second.
Yes, thank you, Danielle. That's the sort of expert input we need, that the patterns you see in this map do reflect your understanding of risk, of desertification and degradation. You know, myself, I'm not familiar with the geographic patterns across Chile as you are, and you know the spatial data also much better. But just from the technical component to explain the legend and the colors, yes, the violet, purple, or blue, whatever we want to call it, that cold color you see is where the value is low. So that would be that the risk of land degradation or desertification is low. In this case, it's always the same pattern across all the data layers. And then as you move through the greens up into the yellows, these warmer colors, this is where the values are higher, because if this map is showing desertification and degradation risk, that means it's the higher risk of those things. So any layer, whatever we're talking about, you're going to see the same scale from cold or blue being low up into the warmer yellows, greens and yellows being higher values.
Gracias, Oscar. Y tenemos el comentario de Claudio.
Okay, thank you, Oscar. And Claudio says that in CONAP, where the data comes from, he is going to just say something. Okay, I just wanted to ask about the methodology, because more than the data itself, this layer, and I think it's well represented, especially I want to verify with Georgina and the team, but I'm trying to see that I'm placing 1 and 10 for every weight, because I'm not sure how trustworthy the information is. So perhaps Oscar can elaborate on that. What characteristics, what features, what could make us reduce our values or weighting? What should we consider based on your prior experiences with other countries? Just to maybe shed light on this for me, so I won't go to the extremes. Okay, thank you.
Can I confirm whether you're asking about the confidence or both the importance and the confidence, both of the scores?
Por ejemplo, con el, no el
Okay,
nivel de
for example,
el nivel de importancia.
oh, the level of importance, the weighting. The first part.
Okay. To be honest, with other countries, we also see a strong tendency to give the highest weights to almost everything. And I think that that's because we don't want to say that anything is not important. All of these spatial data reflect environmental values that are important. They all support the policy commitments. That's by design. So it's normal to see very high values. We ask for an average value of 5, but we never get it. So that's okay. Don't feel bad about that. What I do ask you to think about is if you do see some things as being slightly less important, to try and give them a little bit lower of a weight. But that's going to be based on your views and maybe the ministry or the institution that you work for. So you're reflecting those views as stakeholders in environmental management in Chile. But it's normal to give high weights. If everything has 10 from everybody, then we're back at the starting point again. It's the same as everything having 5, and we'll run the optimization based on that. We don't have to have different weights, but if you feel that some things are more important and some things less important, this is your opportunity to reflect that through giving a different weight.
Okay, thanks, Oscar. Okay, Claudio, I hope we were able to answer your question. Natasha also says that the inventory glacier layer is from 2014, and it's being updated right now for up to 2021, and that's the thing that could increase the confidence level in the data. So I'm glad the science team go ahead and take note of that. Thank you for your comments. Those are great comments. Okay, so let's everyone's place their weight, Claudio, and up to now, we have received a 10 from everyone for every data layer. So based on Oscar's comment, everyone's revamped their weighting. That's really good. That's part of this exercise. We're learning as we go. And thank you. Okay, Oscar, continue, if you may.
Thank you. Okay, so we are on slide 11 now. This is a map of IUCN. This is the World Conservation Union map of threatened ecosystems. These are data that come from the Department of Protected Areas. So this is showing the threat status of ecosystems, with the yellows being critically endangered and endangered ecosystems, and the greens and blues being vulnerable and least concerned ecosystems. This data supports the third policy commitment to reduce forest loss and natural ecosystem loss. This is about protecting ecosystems which are threatened. So, so this layer is showing the map of threatened ecosystems. Chile is quite lucky to have this map. Most countries haven't yet assessed their ecosystems for threat status. This is a fairly new concept internationally, and Chile is one of the first countries to actually implement this, as far as I know. So there you have it. This is maybe our 5th planning feature, and we're ready for your weight of importance and confidence in the data.
Tenemos la mano levantada de Priscila. Te escuchamos, Priscila.
Okay, Priscilla raised her hand. Hi, Oscar. Okay, let's see. I'm not really sure because it says threatening, reducing loss of forests and natural systems. Is it referring to forests as natural ecosystems? Because the north seems that nothing's happening there. So for example, I'm not sure if it's reflecting the right for example, the metropolitan area isn't threatened? Is that it? I'm looking at the map now. It just seems weird. Or is it because the emphasis is just on forests? Is it that there's only degradation towards the south in metropolitan areas and not in the north? So could someone comment on that, or you, Oscar? Can you just explain a little bit further, because I still don't get it, because it seems like the north and the south don't really matter. Okay, Daniel has a comment, and he's echoing Priscilla's comment. He's clarifying that this indicator has it reduced. Oh, there's an open mic. Sorry.
Y otros ecosistemas. Daniel, quizá podemos
Sorry.
silenciar el micro un segundo. Sí. Reducir la tasa de pérdida de bosque.
Reducing the rate of forest loss and other ecosystems by attaining the thresholds by low threshold by 2030, restoration of landscapes. Oh, and I apologize for the background noise because I'm in my office and there's another person I share the office with. So yes, okay, there's an issue having to do with scale, resolution scale of the ecosystems. Because an ecosystem may be an area that's rather broad. Perhaps one category, an average category, may not reflect what's happening specifically. And maybe that can block or hide. Are these being hidden, these situations, this reality because of the scale? So maybe it's that there are ecosystems that may overlap other areas to a large extent. So maybe some areas are being blocked or maybe hidden off. Okay, so the central area is correct. What's being shown on the map is correct for the central area. But it seems that there's some differences, especially in the highlands. So why is that? Are we going to have to add complementary layers to enrich in this analysis? That's what it seems to me, Priscilla. That's just my response. Thank you, Daniel and Natalia. Okay, we have a reaction from Esteban as well. Thank you, Cassandra. Now, I understand that this layer that we're using, it stems from, well, the planning unit is the minimum unit for ecosystems. It's being used, the pixel. So perhaps what we could look at is if the conversion to pixel units and the classification or the ranking, it could give us, or classification could give us a better a better range. But the information, baseline information is that. That's what we have. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Okay, thank you, Esteban. Priscilla, I think the discussion, I think your doubts have been answered, and we'll look at this based on how Daniel mentioned. Okay, the only thing when you add the information, could you add the scale or pixel, maybe in the legend, just to make, or where the data source area section is, just to make better sense of that. Okay, the pixel scale, that is. No, thank you for your comments. And we also have comments from Joanna, who says, we need feedback as to, sorry, Joanna's saying, do you need validation on the information at a national level, on the scale? Or do you understand the question? No. I think that the best that the colleagues from the ministry are the best indicated to respond to questions about validation, but the degree of the threatened ecosystems has to do with the Ministry of the Environment. They're the ones to respond to this. The only difference may be with regards to how often the layers are updated. And Natasha's commenting on that in the chat. On remaining ecosystems, there may be a variation compared to the original study, but the status of the conservation of the ecosystems is a study done by the Ministry of the Environment. Thank you.
Oscar, do you have any reactions, or let's move on to the next layer? There are some colleagues that have not responded. Hernan is here, Georgina. Priscilla, I don't know if you've been able to weight the data. And Trevor. So we move on to the next layer of data.
Yes, thank you. And I think we're going to, we have about 15 layers to get through and about 45 minutes to do it. So it gives us about 3 minutes to give to each layer. So you're going to watch me now shift gears a little bit into the high-speed highway gear. Part of that shifting means we're going to start doing sometimes 2 layers at once. So we're going to do our first time of doing 2 layers at once because they're very linked layers. They both focus on threatened species, different measures of threatened species. So they're very similar. They both support the threatened species conservation target number 4. So the first layer, which you're viewing now, is from ARCLIM and MMA, which might be the protected areas ministry, but it's showing threatened species richness of Chile. So this is plants and animals which are vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered, and it's showing the richness, the number of those species across Chile. Again, these yellows and greens being places that have lots of threatened species. But this first layer, threatened species, is for today's conditions, current conditions. And now we can go to the next layer. This layer is very similar. It's also supporting threatened species conservation, but this is about risk. This is the risk index for loss of plant and animal species due to future change in climate. So the first layer we're going to have you wait for importance and confidence is the current distribution of threatened species. This layer is about the future conditions. We all know climate change is going to be driving many species to extinction or to risk. This map, which is not showing a lot of places, it's really highlighting only a few places. This one's showing that the risk of future loss. It's also supporting this layer is also supporting target 5, which is about landscape restoration and resilience to climate change. So conserving species that are in risk under climate change. So I think we can weight these two together.
Ahí estoy viendo entonces que ya varios están entrando aquí al Excel. A ver. Hemos apretado, hemos pisado el acelerador. A ver.
We're stepping on the gas pedal very well. Priscilla is connected. Alvar, as well as Álvaro. They are all inputting their values. Okay, 8 people already. Ready. So we don't have high weighting anymore. We receive all types of weighting. Álvaro.
Una consulta acá para quienes conozcan cómo funciona este mapa. ¿Se entendería entonces que
So, you understand that low value is low risk of loss of diversity, right? I want to make that sure. Oscar, please.
Yes,
Nos-
blue is low risk of loss of diversity due to climate change. And yellow is high risk of loss of diversity due to climate change.
De pérdida de biodiversidad. Joana también tenía un comentario, creo.
Joanna had a comment too. I just wanted to complement the question that the range climate change is 0-1. That's the range of the risk. No risk or extreme risk, so there are different variations there. Do you have your hand raised from the previous? So, remember that we are weighting both layers at the same time. We see wealth of endangered species, so we're still missing 2 or 3 people. So, Oscar, perhaps we can move on to the next layer.
Yes, thank you. I think you meant to say next layers. We're going to do another 2.
Dos, listo.
Okay, so these are 2 more which are connected. So the first slide 14, yes. These both pertain to communities and their socioeconomic vulnerability and the connections to the environment. So this is about supporting landscape and ecological restoration, but particularly strengthening communities' resilience to climate change. So the first layer that we have is from the Social Observatory of the Ministry of Social Development and Family. It's a multidimensional measure of deprivation and poverty. We know that people that struggle, communities and people that struggle to meet their basic needs, deprivation, as well as with lower incomes, poverty, are more vulnerable to climate change and have less resilience and adaptive capacity to climate change. So this first layer maps that multidimensional deprivation and poverty. The next layer, if we can go 1 slide forward, is an index of the vulnerability of human settlements to climate threats. This is an approximation of the capacity of human settlements to respond and adapt to climate hazards, higher value, higher resilience, a proxy to higher vulnerability. Oh, sorry. We flipped this. Yes, no, we're mapping. This came to us as a map of resilience. We flipped it and made it a map of vulnerability. Because the belief here is that essential life support areas, protecting, sustainably manage, and restoring ecosystems can help buffer vulnerable communities from climate change. Healthy ecosystems, healthy communities. So we're mapping this in 2 ways. One is just a direct measure of poverty and deprivation, and the second is a measure of vulnerability to climate stress. And these are both supporting Target 5, strengthening communities' resilience to climate change. So we can go ahead. If there's any comments on these data, that would be great. Otherwise, we can go ahead and weight these two layers.
Gracias, Oscar. Igual antes de que sigamos con la ponderación, estaba faltando la ponderación de Trevor para esta capa de datos, a pesar que Trevor pisó el acelerador mucho más que todos nosotros y avanzó con todas las capas. Trevor, por favor.
Trevor moved with all the layers. Trevor moved with all the layers. So Alvaro, please, if you could put the weighting of the prior layer. Okay, now let's move on now with the ones that Oscar has just explained. Joanna has a question. What's the source of the vulnerability index for human settlements? How did you get to that index?
So this was an index that was developed within Chile. We just inverted the scale. Esteban and Danielle, I'm not sure if you're able to comment more on the source of these data. Or anybody else that might be more familiar with them than me.
Sí. Entiendo que la fuente es ArcClim, como aparece en...
I understand that the source is ArcClim, right? It's the inversion of the resilience index, okay? I think that's not the source, because in ArcClim there are several impact chains, but there are others that are associated to human settlements, and in health and welfare there are others. That's why I have a doubt. In the previous case mentioned by Oscar about the multidimensional poverty index, you have the variables for health, education, housing, and environment. The multidimensional poverty index created from the CASEM survey is Ministry of Social Development and Family. So there we include the data on these 5 dimensions, okay? Education, health, poverty, housing, environment, and networks and social cohesion. In the case of this layer on the screen, you don't consider that data, only the data on the investment made or mentioned by Oscar on the resilience indexes. That's why you have more yellow.
La diferencia, creo que lo podemos chequear en cualquier caso, o yo lo puedo chequear casi inmediatamente también con las matrices de datos que tenemos en paralelo y lo pongo ahí en el chat para mayor claridad.
Sí, sí, chequeo, porque por lo menos en ArcClim estamos tratando de llegar a algo como esto, pero no existe en este momento, no estoy como...
In ArcClim, we are trying to get to this.
Perfecto, yo creo que Esteban, mientras seguimos avanzando, él va a poder revisar esto y aclaramos la duda, Joana, en el chat. ¿Te parece? Para que sigamos.
We can move on, so Oscar, and then we can clarify this in the future. Thank you for this, Esteban, for the support. And we are waiting 2 layers at the same time.
Y la de índice de vulnerabilidad climática a los asentamientos humanos. Ahí solo nos está faltando una persona que realice su ponderación, que es Joana. Joana quizá ahora lo completa.
Joanna, perhaps you can complete this. And in the previous layer, Oscar, I think we can move on to the following data layers.
Okay, thank you. We can go to slide 16, forward 1. Okay, this layer also pertains to strengthening communities' resilience. This is a layer from the Indigenous Territorial Information System, mapping Indigenous development areas, titles of Merced, and the spatial location of communities registered by CONADI. So this is showing in yellow, basically from a number of sources, the distribution of indigenous communities across Chile. In often cases, these communities are more vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change and can benefit from these ELSA areas to enhance their resilience. And I think we'll just do this single layer by itself. We can go ahead and weight this layer if there's no further discussion.
Perfecto. Y ante eso pregunta, Karim pregunta.
So, Karim is asking, up to what year is the CONADI layer updated? Now, when we move, if we move by weighting this layer, this is column T of our Excel. Álvaro, Joana.
Dos personas, así que yo creo que Oscar podemos pasar a la siguiente capa de datos. Pierde cuidado, Karim, que Esteban te va a enviar por mensaje en el chat la respuesta a tu consulta para que podamos avanzar.
We can move on. So, Oscar, please, next one.
Okay, thank you. The next layer, if we can advance, is the potential, so our composite sensitivity index, so potential effects of soil water content, elevation, topographic moisture index on forest greenness. So this also is speaking to the landscape ecological restoration. It's about vulnerability, particular to the forest greenness index. And we'll just weight this one. Actually, we'll weight one more as well. We'll weight this composite sensitivity index, and then we'll go forward one more slide to the climate stress index. So the other one is focused primarily on forest greenness. This is the climate stress index, combining warm episodes, extreme participation, and drought. So this is focusing mostly on those climate events, not the sensitivity of the ecosystem. Like the previous layer, this is now focusing more on the climate stresses. And we can weight these two together.
Listo, entonces pasamos a ponderar ambas. En nuestro Excel son la columna.
So we will weight the two of them. It's V and X.
Aquí ya tenemos la información que nos comenta Esteban.
We have the information provided.
Sobre áreas de desarrollo indígenas actualizar al 2017, ¿no? Ya incluso hemos colocado la fuente de información, el link.
There, Esteban has put the information link, which is available at that link. Is it possible to explain the composite sensitivity index? Can we go back to the previous slide for Claudio to be able to make his weighting? One moment, Claudio. Oscar will turn on his mic. He wants a clarification on the sensitivity index from the previous slide. Perhaps we can move on. In the climate stress index, we have 8 responses. Yes, Oscar. Claudio is asking, is it possible for you to explain this layer on the composed sensitivity index, this one, or compound sensitivity index?
Okay, thanks. I'll do my best, but we might have to have someone else step in. But my audio at the moment is the Spanish and the English at the same time, which makes it quite hard to understand. I'm not sure if that's a channel problem or something with the translation. Just flagging that. So we're talking about slide 18, the climate stress index. So you can see the colors. This is more uniform across Chile than some of the other data sets, but the bluer areas have lower climate stress, and the green and yellow areas have higher climate stress, which is a combination of different climatic variables. This is warm episodes, extreme precipitation, so very heavy rainfall, as well as drought. And obviously these are the 3 big climate stresses that impact human well-being, communities, heat waves, floods, and droughts, or heavy rainfall, which can cause floods, can cause erosion. So these are the 3 big climate threats that are faced. Not sure if that helps understand this layer.
Claudio, nos comentas si así ha quedado más claro. Quizá puedes encender tu micro.
Is that clearer, Claudio, now for you? The previous one, please. The sensitivity, this one. Can you explain this one further, please?
De todas formas, muchas gracias por la explicación del anterior.
But your previous explanation was very useful anyways.
Thank you. It's very kind, very kind. So this is a measure of how sensitive ecosystems can be, based on the potential effects of changes in water content. So this could be drought stress, elevation and topographic moisture, on forest greenness. So I'm afraid I'm not very familiar with how this was developed. It's a measure of sensitivity, how sensitive ecosystems are. But maybe somebody who knows more about this data could step in and explain some more of the thinking behind the data.
Gracias, Oscar. Quizá Esteban nos puede...
Esteban, please, perhaps you can give us more information about how these data were compiled. Give me 1 second, yes. Oscar, can you hear the interpretation well now?
Much better.
Joanna asked a question about the ARCLIM, the Social Vulnerability Index. Has it been built based on socioeconomic factors of the urban population? Esteban is looking for this information. Perhaps you can explain it later. Esteban, your mic is off. The information used is to revert the values of the General Resilience Index, an index calculated in the ARCLIM platform. So to reverse those values, that is what was asked by Joanna. And in the case of the compound sensitivity index, this is an index also calculated by ARCLIM. It's one of the impact, green impact, chain. So I will add that link to the chat. Now, Oscar, we have completed the weighting, so we can move on to the next layer.
Okay, thank you. This is a layer we'll do by itself. If we can go to slide 19, this is a map of priority areas for conservation. This is a priority map that was developed by Chile, identifying areas which are priority for conservation, includes private conservation initiatives and priority sites for conservation. There's two targets, number 6 and 7, that both speak to taking action in prioritized terrestrial ecosystems and priority areas. So here, this map maps these priority areas. So you could see in yellow those locations. If anybody wants to give any comments on how this map was developed, but for us, it seemed like a good fit for this taking action in priority places. Otherwise, we can go to the weighting.
Sí, tenemos el comentario. Tenemos el comentario de Daniel Álvarez del Ministerio del Ambiente.
Daniel Álvarez. Yes, please. As part of the goals associated to targets associated to restoration, that's okay. Okay, but these areas could be related to protection targets as well. Perhaps they can also support protection targets. Priority conservation areas, it's okay. But going forward, they could become priority areas. So restoration, it's okay, but so it could only be supported, supporting protected areas.
Okay, thank you. They've been identified by us as also supporting protected areas. The target speaks to the restoration that we recognize the support of these areas for protection also. Okay, I think we're able to do the weighting for that. I'm going to see how many more layers we have to do.
Sí, están ya avanzando con la ponderación. 8 participantes.
Yes. We have already 8 that have voted, 4 to go. Esteban. The compound sensitivity index for you to get the information from where it was obtained. We have Karim's comment that one of the main objectives are the effective conservation and protection areas. I think it's been clear, right? Clarified now, Karin. Yes, of course, that has been clarified. Thank you very much.
Perfecto, gracias, Karin. Entonces, ya hemos recibido.
So, we have received the weighting by everybody, so we can move on to the next layer, okay?
Okay, I think I found a whole new gear. We're now going to do 3 layers at once. So these next 3 layers all support policy target 8, reducing emissions from forestry. Now, this target speaks specifically to forestry, but I believe we're interpreting this more broadly as reducing emissions from the land sector. So we're viewing this as mitigating climate change, using land use and land cover to help mitigate climate change. So we're interpreting a little bit broader than just forestry. So there's 3 layers we have supporting this. The first is the occurrence probability of forest fires. We know that these forest fires can be very large emission events, and increasing the resilience and protecting and better managing places that are vulnerable to forest fires can help store carbon there. These data are from RChem. If we can go to the next layer. These are data on above and below ground terrestrial biomass carbon. So this is basically the carbon stored in living plants, their roots, and they're above ground as well. So this is basically carbon stored in these ecosystems, in living things. And the next slide is the carbon stored in the soil. So that's when you put those together, the biomass carbon, the living carbon with the soil carbon, that's a total ecosystem carbon. So this is mapping carbon in soils down to 30 centimeters of depth. These are all 3 national data sets that pertain to mitigating climate change, thinking about reducing carbon emissions. Forest fires, biomass carbon, this is basically trees, and soil carbon, this is carbon stored in soil, very important carbon store as well. So I think we're able to weight those 3 together, and we can also discuss any one of those layers if anyone has any questions or comments.
Sí, Daniel, te escuchamos.
Sí,
Daniel.
de humedales también pueden.
Okay, the wetlands colleagues can comment, but it's a fact that in the south, in Patagonia, there are some other types of plants also in the Altiplano, and there you have plenty of carbon stored. Is this the peat bogs? Peat bogs. Is that included in the map? Peats or peat bogs, you know, are they included in the map? Cassandra, I work on that, of course. I have the same question. I understand that there are many sources of information about carbon, and one paper that we produced in 2020, we used a global layer. We discounted plantations because plenty of carbon stored in plantations. We discounted that. And the peats, that has to do with the methodology that you use. Many times peats are hidden in Patagonia under certain trees. So there you use radars to monitor them, but the methodology applied is different, okay?
Por lo menos las de agrícola intensiva.
So we
Nosotros en un trabajo en el ministerio que hicimos el año 2020 con una consultora que
2020 we worked with a consultant on this, and we used a layer for carbon monitoring, but we did a recount or discount of the stored carbon, and we understood that it was anthropogenic. It didn't meet the objective. So the objective here perhaps allows us to include it. Okay, I think it's a sensitive topic. Okay, thank you, Hernan, for your comment. I'm not sure, Oscar, if there's feedback or stay on his comment. Okay, if I understand his Hernan's question, well, he's referring to a methodological issue as to what happens within this layer. I understand that since we generally want to reduce emissions in forestry, well, it's assumed that in considering this layer, forest plantations or crops in forests are being included. But we would have to, if we want to make that distinction, I think we have to review the layer again, which is provided by SAG and improved by CONAFIN, okay, Chilean government bodies. Okay. So yes, that would be good because that way we could make sure that we're within the right ranges. Okay, thank you, Hernan. Esteban is taking note for about that. So Oscar, we reviewed 3 layers of data for weighting. Oscar?
Okay, great. So I think we can now move to slide 23. We're going to do 2 layers. These both speak to directly protecting glaciers as well as ensuring water supply. The first layer is inventory of glaciers. These are glacier areas. And the second one is a periglacial buffer area. It's the buffer area around these glaciers. And it's measuring the amount of snow accumulated annually, higher values representing higher probability of glacial conservation. So both of these are about protecting glaciers, which is a direct policy, but also ensuring water supply, glaciers and their periglacial areas. So I believe we can weight these 2 together. Actually, we're gonna do 3 because the other one is also highly linked. If we can go to slide 25. This is the sensitivity of water supply. So these are all around critical water supply areas, really. This is now, obviously this doesn't support the glacial target, but this supports ensuring water supply. This is sensitivity of water supply. You could see across Chile, many areas have sensitive water supplies, and these areas could be critical for protecting, managing, and restoring to ensure water supply. So I think we can do these 3 together: glaciers, periglacial areas, and sensitivity of water supply. Thank you for all the discussion about the data sources and what they represent. I think we'll continue with that model. If there's any questions about these data, please go ahead and ask them, and the people who know about these data best will probably step in to help address any questions. Otherwise, we can weight these 3.
Gracias, Oscar. Entonces, para estar todos en la misma
Okay,
página.
Oscar, just so we can just get on the same page, we are on the, let's say the shadowed columns. We're going to weight glaciers, the periglacier buffer zones, and domestic, urban, rural water sensitivity. We're all going to weight this together. So if you have any questions about this, please go ahead and do so as we vote, or not vote, weigh the objectives. Okay, so let's see, or the targets rather. We have 2 people that are left. Let's see, Joanna, are you still with us? I'm not sure to be able to, we're nearing the end. 1 second. Yes, Priscilla. I have a question. Pardon my ignorance. what is periglacial zone and glacier zone? What's the difference? Pardon my ignorance, I'm not sure. Could you elaborate on that, Oscar? What that means? Because glaciers for me are glaciers, but I'm not sure what varieties there are. Thank you. I never heard of that term.
So I could be wrong. I'm not a cryologist. I don't study the frozen parts of the planet. But my understanding is the glaciers would be year-round snow and ice cover. And the periglacial areas would be areas adjacent to these where you might see summertime full melting of the snow and exposure of ground. But these areas, the snow accumulation in these areas are still really important as they melt through the spring and summer for water supply. So that's my understanding. The glaciers, the core that lasts through the summer, and the periglacial is an area that gets covered by snow seasonally. I'm not sure, Esteban, you were gonna add something. I'm not sure if I got that all right.
Oh, está perfecto.
That's perfect, Oscar. You did really well. So glacier is all year round, and that's the area that is subject to procedures or subject to freezing, to snow accumulation, but that's basically it. If you want more information, we have colleagues from the Public Works Office that knows much more about this topic. If you want more information on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla, for your question. I still didn't know also, Cassandra says, what periglacial was, so we all learned. Thank you for asking. So then we have two people that are left for the weight having to do with urban-rural domestic water sensitivity. So if you could do that, and then we could move along to the next group or layer, Oscar.
Okay, we only have 2 more layers. We're going to do them separately. We might as well slow down. Okay, so the next layer, the one we're going to vote on now, or not vote, give weights to now, is urban greening opportunities. Now, Chile is one of only 2 other countries have done it. Chile is the first country where we have an action focused on urban areas and increasing the greenness or green space in urban areas. And that's because there's a particular policy target that speaks to urban ecological infrastructure, as well as strengthening resilience to climate change, but primarily urban ecological infrastructure. So we've created this 4th action where we're actually going to look at places within urban cities. Now, our resolution is not great. It's 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, but we'll look for places broadly within cities that could benefit from urban greening. We measure these benefits as urban greening opportunities. And this is basically reversing a measure of greenness called the Normalized Differential Vegetation Index, NDVI. It's just a measure of greenness. And we reverse it so that places which are very brown and gray are given a high value. And then we multiply that by heat wave frequency within urban areas in Chile. So we have this measure of locations within cities that experience extreme heat, as well as places that don't have a lot of greenness. Now, this is because greenness can really help buffer against these heat events, as well as have other health and well-being benefits for people. People that have access to urban green spaces it's been shown to have the same effect as antidepressant medicine in terms of health benefits. So we're measuring the opportunities for urban greening in this way with a measure of greenness as well as a measure of extreme heat. Priscilla, you're looking at this going, maybe you're suspicious. Is there a question about this, or does anybody have any questions or comments about this last layer about urban greening opportunities?
I mean, if you look at the map, it's like there is no problem. I mean, it's like it's like, I don't know, sounds weird. And Kari said that the sources is not clear. Data sources.
Okay, well, it looks like we can go ahead and weight this layer. I'll just mention that the NDVI it's global remotely sensed data.
Yeah.
And the heat wave frequency in urban areas in Chile, I believe this is Chilean data.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can go ahead and give this one a weight. It's supporting primarily the urban ecological infrastructure target, as well as helping strengthen the resilience to climate change.
Quizá Esteban también nos puedes apoyar en colocar en el chat la fuente.
Esteban, would you please also mention the source and maybe explain what the acronym is for NDVI? Because the slide is a little bit cut off. So Claudio, go ahead. Just to add to what Oscar and Esteban are saying, at the end, since NDVI, that's when there's less vegetation, and you multiply that by areas that have higher events. So the higher numbers, higher values mean that they need more urban greening. Is that it?
That's right. Yeah, they're in greatest need of urban greening. So that's why we call those opportunities to increase urban greening.
Gracias, Oscar. Y también tenemos la consulta de Osvaldo.
Thanks, Oscar. And we have another Osvaldo saying, but don't we have to cross-reference this or overlap that with the cities, or has that been done?
Yes, that's
with
been
urban
done.
areas.
Yes, this we did, like we discussed last week, this action, it can only happen in the urban areas. And that's a map from the Ministry of National Assets, Housing and Urbanism.
No sé si con esto entonces Osvaldo aclara para que puedas realizar la
Okay, Osvaldo, does that make sense? Okay, it seems like it does. Okay, so we're going to see his score on the screen, and the same goes with Joanna. Joanna, do you still understand? Are you still here? Just we need to complete the waiting, or if you're having connection issues, just let us know. The same goes with Priscilla. Okay, great. Okay, they filled out the that section. It's done. So we can move on to the last and final layer of the session.
What great stamina and work ethic from everybody. We've made our way through 21 and we're now on our 22nd and last planning feature. This is supporting sustainable agriculture, the policy target number 12. And this is a map of agricultural activities in Chile from the Integrated Monitoring System for Native Forest Ecosystems. It doesn't sound like the right reference. I'm going to go ahead and recheck that. But this is a map of agricultural activities. Yes, that seems to be the reference. That's the reference we have for the source of these data. CINEF. So if there's any discussion about this layer, that would be great. Otherwise, feel free to go and give it a weight. This will be the final layer for weighting. If there's any other discussion, we can have that. Otherwise, Cassandra will be seeing us out for the day. And then the science team will have some work tonight to integrate these weights into the tool and prepare for tomorrow morning.
Claro que sí, todavía tenemos algunas ponderaciones pendientes.
Yes, we still have some weights that are pending. Georgina, are you still with us? Osvaldo? Karin?
Joana, Priscila, para que podamos culminar el ejercicio.
That way we could end the exercise.
Sí, claro, por supuesto.
How do you define an area as being agricultural or not? How do you know? Like, how do you define that? Esteban, would you mind elaborating on that? Oh, sorry. What is sustainable agriculture according to CIMET, where the data came from, the source of the data? Would you explain that, Esteban?
Esteban, ¿estás con el micro silenciado? Sí. Y después le podemos dar la palabra a Georgina, que también.
Then Georgina can take the floor. Perhaps she has a comment on that as well. Not entirely sure, but what I understand, Hernan, is that more than a definition of sustainable agriculture, which doesn't exist, we're mapping areas where sustainable agriculture can be promoted, understood as broadening the strategy for food sustainability, basically promoting organic agriculture and other types of lower impact agriculture that's not traditional agriculture, but there isn't a definition per se of this type of agriculture, sustainable agriculture. Okay, okay. And was this analyzed for the entire country?
Tradicional transformarse en algo sostenible?
Sí, en este caso, la información que se está utilizando me parece porque
The
no tenemos una
information that's being used, well, we don't have this type of coverage on national level. So it seems to me that the source information, which is being covered in Oscar's slide, is a natural source, the CIMEF. I can vet that, I can verify that when we look at the next few questions.
Esto lo puede revisar Esteban.
Okay, this can be reviewed by Esteban while we hear Georgina's question and then Karin's comment. Okay, Georgina? Thank you, Cassandra. The CIMEF project is a joint project with CONAF and FRAU that works in detecting changes in land use. So what we're seeing here is the use of how land is used, agricultural use of land per se, where it's from remote sensing, and then we consider definitions for native forest plants or native forest plans or drawings. So one of the pros of this layer is that they're national level layers, and it allows us to update the information every 2 years for the entire country. But it only refers to how land is being used. Here, it refers to agriculture if it's from CIMEF. So that's what it reflects. Oh, can I interrupt? Yes, Hernan, go ahead. Okay, maybe it's because of Zoom, but see, maybe it's because I can't see well in the slide, but is there any agriculture up north? It seems like there isn't. Well, it's from CIMEF. We refer to land use only, agricultural land use. Now, I'm not sure if this layer that we're seeing now has been subject to other types of changes, or I'm not sure how the ranges are defined. I think, Hernan, that Georgina can also comment on this. Esteban just checked for more information. So before we hear Karen and Daniel's reactions, go ahead, Esteban. Okay, as Georgina says, it's a layer from CIMEF when it was last updated. So Georgina, it doesn't have any sort of special consideration except for being subject to a raster format. So it's the same layer that we always use. Okay, Priscilla's mentioning that it could be a good idea to add the data source and perhaps not play it so low on the screen because it's being covered here by Zoom, by the menu. Okay, Karine, yes, I have a question about another information layer that we commented on in the first session last week. I forgot the name of it, but it's the human footprint, index. I remember asking about that index. It was a global index, and it's updated every so often, but it draws my attention that the human footprint isn't included here. Or do you mean the human footprint? Is that it? Human footprint? Yes, that's it. That's it. Yeah, like human interference, human presence. Okay, before you respond, Esteban, how about we hear Daniel, and then after that you can comment, Esteban. Okay, Daniel. Thank you. I don't want to comment on what Karen is saying, but what I was asking myself was that due to scale, perhaps are there things that aren't being shown on the Zoom map? Maybe the cross-cutting valleys, they should be there and they're not being shown on the map, and other valleys are missing. Also, I don't know, there's just a lot of nuances that are missing on the map. There's much more than just what we see here. Also, having to do with agriculture and to what extent is agriculture covering surface area, because we have crops, orchards also, but we also include or is there a possibility to see how about plains areas or other plains or other areas where agriculture is conducted or sorry, agriculture is practiced on prairies, for example, or fields and sustainable agriculture or other types of categories. So I guess that's my question. Can we make, can this coverage of agriculture be a little bit broader or restricted, or to what extent is agriculture addressed? Okay, thank you, Daniel. Okay, Esteban. I don't really have much to add on Karen's question, because we spoke about the use of including the human footprint index. I believe, Oscar, that in this last selection of layers, we ruled it out because we're not sure. I'm not sure, though. Could you just elaborate on that? Is the human footprint index included?
Oscar, tu micro está silenciado.
Oscar, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, my computer died, so I missed some of the discussion. The human footprint is not part of this agricultural layer. It was part of some of the other layers, the degradation and desertification risk layer. But here, this is just a map of agriculture. It sounds like the discussion is around some of the challenges of mapping agriculture, particularly pasture lands. So my only input might be to consider that when you're giving the confidence of the data. It sounds like a lot of the discussion here is about the confidence in these data.
Perdón, Oscar, no, yo no me refería a...
Oscar, I wasn't referring so much to the last variable. Since we're ending the weighting exercise, I just wanted to, well, unless you think we should include it, or if it's going to be referred to tomorrow, I was thinking of human footprint as a layer in general, or not necessarily tied to sustainable agriculture or not.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I misunderstood. Then yes, the Chilean footprint, we weren't able to acquire it independently, but it is part of the desertification and degradation risk. And then the global human footprint we used for the hard constraints that we looked at last year. So it's not a variable by itself, but it is playing a role in identifying the essential life support areas.
Creo que con eso Karin quedó más claro, ¿no?
Okay, I think that that makes better sense, Karen, right? Yes. Okay, thank you, Oscar, for that. And Karen, okay, so we are reaching the end of our second day of our second consultation round. And we'd like to congratulate all of you for your excellent participation, although at some point in time we had to put the higher gear and accelerate. We ended the exercise, thank God. I wanted to just allow Esteban to share some closing remarks on today's session before we close. Esteban, go ahead. Thank you, Cassandra. More than a thought, I think that we've all thought a lot about reviewing each of the layers that we've considered here. I'd like to thank you all for your participation, for your engagement, and for your generosity with the great information you've shared with each of the different layers that we reviewed. There are many observations, many comments, and many queries about certain layers that would be more helpful. That way we can revisit them and perhaps shed some light on some of them, or change the classification, or just tweak the nuances and improve this in the future. So we don't want to overburden Oscar with looking at each layer, but definitely in the future, review this like in the near future, but not tomorrow. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to send them through the chat now or today, or email your queries to us, because we also have another session where we review results, and we can make some adjustments for the final map to be consistent in reflecting all the information that you provided and reflecting your concerns with the best information available in the country. So perhaps we can comment on that. I don't know if Karen or Daniel want to add to that, to the close, but that's what's most significant, I think, what we saw today. Okay, I just wanted to thank everyone who was present, and then everyone for staying in the session, and ask you to please attend tomorrow so we can complete this. And this preliminary stage is very important. So please come back to us tomorrow. We expect you all in attendance. Thank you, Karen. Daniel? Yes, we want to reinforce the call to all of you, appeal that you please stay during the entire workshop. It's really important for you to do that, to make the data very strong and have a great result. So it's the last push, the last leg. Tomorrow, remember, this is the heart of the session. We have to be able to see the interaction for the LSM map. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to meet at same time, same channel, 10 a.m. Chile. And I hope that you have an excellent day, and we will see each other tomorrow. Thanks for all of your comments. Everyone says thank you in the chat. Thank you, Joanna. And same here. So see you all tomorrow.
Hasta mañana. Chao, hasta mañana. Chao, Priscila. Chao, Daniel.
Chao, saludos.
Chao, chao. Chao, Osvaldo.